My name is Tim Felfoldi. I'm a resident at St. Leonard's Halfway House. My FPS is 851460C. For those that don't understand that, it's a government number, and that's my identity within the federal institutions. So, I'm here today to turn around and talk about the effects of learning disabilities, as well as the young offender system that I'm a graduate of into the adult system. So, I hope you'll pay attention and learn something out of this. Thank you. Okay, so my parents came here in 1956 from the Hungarian uprising. They settled in Toronto, so I was born and raised in Toronto. My father was an employee at Queen's Park. I have trust issues with authorities because, again, my dad worked at Queen's Park, and the abuses that I suffered at home were extensive, to the point of fractured skull, being beaten basically every day for basically nothing. I also have a learning disability called dyslexia. It's a problem reading and writing. School was extremely difficult for me. In 5 years, I went to 6 different schools, try to get accommodations for it. I wasn't diagnosed until I was the age of 11 with my disability. I ended up dropping out because I wasn't even at a grade 3 level, and in grade 9, I wasn't functioning anywhere where I should have. I left home when I was 15. For 3 months, I lived out on the streets, and this was in the winter months. My cousin, who is my co-accused, actually broke into his building, downstairs, basement lockers and stuff like that, so that I actually had somewhere warm to sleep. And that's something I'll never forget, because he went out, as far as I was concerned, he went out of his way to turn around and make sure that I wasn't out in the cold. So a lot of times I feel I was indebted to him. Even though he's my cousin, to me he was more like my brother. And like I said, when I left home when I was 15, I started forming relationships with girls and that, and we contacted the police. The police turned around and basically sloughed it off and turned around and said, don't worry about it. You're young enough that you can have another one. The laws back then, again, didn't permit charges to be laid, because there was really nothing for the unborn child. And as a parent, that wasn't something that I wanted to hear, and being constantly reminded by sleeping with your partner and watching her fall deeper and deeper into depression only added to my sense of urgency that this needed to be fixed, and there was no fixing it. Well, actually, before we got to the park, my cousin stole a bike. But when we were down in the park, a complete stranger came up and started questioning my cousin and my brother at the time about the bike. Me and my girlfriend were a little distance away, and some things were said which escalated into an argument. The argument, as far as I was concerned at the time, was going to escalate into violence. And even though my cousin's 5 years older than me, he never experienced any of the kind of abuses that I went through. So, and my cousin, like I said, to me was my brother. And I love him, and there's nothing that I wouldn't do. But also adding the fact that he broke in to his building and make sure that I had a place to sleep when I was homeless. I felt obligated to turn around and protect him and do whatever I can for him. So when the argument took place, I ended up approaching the individual and turned around and said, if you had to argue with him, you had to argue with me. I was the first one to throw punches at a complete stranger because I thought that I was protecting my family. It ended up, it cost the guy his life. Now I have a boss that died. I have a child that I couldn't bury. I have a relationship that's falling apart. I have no family that I can rely on. I have absolutely nothing, and now I'm responsible for a murder. The reason I was charged with first-degree murder is because after the fight took place, on the way home, my cousin was extremely concerned about going back to prison. He just got out of jail that morning. And I simply asked him, I said, what would you do? Do you want to go back? And my intent wasn't to kill this guy. It was just basically to shut him up. And my cousin said yes. So because we went back, it was now perceived as first degree and not manslaughter or second degree. I didn't really have any real concept of the severity of what I did. To me, it was a fist fight. That's how I looked at it. I didn't look at it as, you know what I mean, I'm sitting here intending to kill the guy. And so when I got arrested, I was facing first-degree murder, aggravated assault, forced confinement, assault causing bodily harm, assault with a weapon, common assault, and some of that was ×2 on 3 different victims. I was actually happy I got arrested. And pulled out of the situation. As f***ed up as that sounds, it's because it gave me an opportunity to sit there and not be living in this constant chaos where everything and everyone was a complete threat. And prison inside was no different than prison at home. My interactions with staff and the police hit me. They turned around and threatened to kill me because people didn't understand what was going on. All they seen was my actions and my age. And you know, you get taken and you get put into the system, and then for that system to turn around and continue the same abuse that I had when I was out on the street doesn't help. As for me being a child going through this, like I said, it was a relief in some sense because it pulled me away from the traumas that I was dealing with and all that. But in the other sense, it also kills your soul. The staff that do support you and take the time, they get peer pressure from the other staff. oh, here's just another con lover. Things like that are said, or, you know, I mean, why pay attention? He's just a rotten kid. So those that do support are hesitant on supporting. And the higher up superiors, like, one hand doesn't know what's going on with the other. The judge doesn't know what's going on. The police that arrested the kid and put him in the jail cell doesn't know what's going on because it's out of his hands now. His job is just to escort and lay the charges. Then they go into the young offender facility. So nobody knows what's going on. So it's different than, you know what, if nobody knew and I wasn't diagnosed, but I was diagnosed. And there's a lot of other children that go through these systems that are diagnosed. So from the age of 18, 19 to 23, 24, within one of Canadians' worst prison systems. I was called a monster. I was compared to Charlie Manson. I was basically written off to the point where people were surprised that I'd even make it out of the maximum security unit. They thought that I would either kill or be killed. So I knew that if things were going to change, I had to work on me first. And very first thing is to educate myself, to learn how to read and write so I can turn around and function. Where that would take me, I would have no idea, but at least I would be able to better understand a world that I wasn't used to functioning in. Kids being kids, when they come to visit, they would see all my tattoos and point out. And even though I worked on myself a bit and I was a little more approachable, it was still hard for me to turn around and talk about the traumas that I went through and that. But at this point, I already had approximately 70% of the tattoos that I have, and I'm about 60% covered. But it was the kids which ended up becoming my stepchildren. When they were small, they would sit there and point on what's this tattoo and what's that tattoo and what's this for and who's this and that, which helped me be able to communicate more. But I have to turn around and say, if it wasn't for the love and support given to me, and it wasn't by the staff or anything else, these are individual people that I come across in my life. It's the love and the support of people. That's what makes people grow. That's what makes them strong, makes them healthy, not somebody being abused and tossed aside. I may not speak about it every day, but it's on me for everybody to see that I relive this day in, day out. There's not one aspect of it that I turn around and let go. And again, the significance of tattooing and the art, I can't state enough. Because it helped me initially while I was inside tell my story, document it, and work through the issues that I had. I don't know if you could see I have void on my stomach because this is where the child was carried and was lost. So it's an empty space. But if you break it down, my actions were caused by vengeance on infant's death. I don't communicate the same as other people, and especially when I was younger. And you're gonna find that, especially with the youth and the growing stats on inmates and the learning disabilities that are in there, we need people to pay attention and help us through these traumas and that and be supportive. I ended up writing a 2.5-page letter. Considering learning a disability, it was extremely hard. But I ended up writing it. And I wanted the victim's family to know that I apologized and that this was nothing that they done. It was nothing that their son done. This was my actions, and there was no reason for it. And I wanted to apologize knowing that there's a chance that they would never forgive me. I wasn't expecting them to forgive me. I just wanted them to know that I regretted what I did, and it was not their fault. Their responses, as I suspected, they didn't want anything to do with me, which was hard, but I understand. I became and I did what I didn't want to. I ended up hurting people just as I was hurt, and in some ways I hurt others more than what I went through. You don't need to go to a prison and become what your friends are because you think it's cool. The coolest thing you can do is heal yourself, find a support network, and turn around and move on and make an amends. And if you can't make amends to your family, your friends, or whoever this is that you've harmed, you can turn around and make a bigger impact in society by helping out those that need help. We all deserve to be loved and accepted and appreciated. So I would just ask that you forgive yourself for the things that you've done. Because every single one of us made mistakes, some worse than others, and just learn from them, improve upon your life, make the circumstances better, and ask for help. I hope you realize that any change begins with you. Any change. And that doesn't matter if you're the child or you're the person harming the child. It can stop. Any of your actions can stop. That's on you, no one else.